Introduction to Chapter 3, Argument by Analogy, from a Workbook for Arguments by Morrow and Weston. There is an exception to rule number 7, which is use more than one example. This exception is an argument by analogy. Arguments by analogy don't use multiple examples to support a generalization. Instead, they argue from one specific example to another, reasoning that because the two examples are alike in many ways, they're also alike in one further specific way. So, here's an example of when a doctor argues that everyone should have regular physical checkups. People take in their car for servicing and checkups every few months without complaint. Why shouldn't they take similar care of their bodies? Okay, let's look at how this works. So this argument suggests that getting a regular physical checkup is like taking your car in for regular servicing. Cars need that kind of attention, otherwise major problems may develop with them. And doesn't it seem like our bodies are like that too? So if we're going to formalize this argument, we would begin with premise 1. People should take their cars in for regular service and checkups, otherwise major problems may develop. And premise 2, people's bodies are like cars because human bodies too are complex systems that can develop problems if not regularly checked up. And we end up with a conclusion. Therefore, people should take themselves in for regular service and checkups also. Okay. Now, notice the italicized word like in the second premise. I'll go back and take a look at it. So notice the italicized word like there in the second premise. When an argument stresses the likeness between two cases, it's in most cases probably an argument from analogy. So here's another example. An interesting switch was pulled in Rome yesterday by Adam Nordwell, an American Chippewa chief, as he descended his plane from California dressed in full tribal regalia. Nordwell announced in the name of the American Indian people that he was taking possession of Italy by right of discovery, in the same way that Christopher Columbus did in America. "I proclaim this day the day of the discovery of Italy," said Nordwell. "What right did Columbus have to discover America when it had already been inhabited for thousands of years? The same right I now have to come to Italy and proclaim the discovery of your country." Nordwell is suggesting that his discovery of Italy is like Columbus' discovery of America in at least one important way. Namely, that both Nordwell and Columbus claimed a country that already had been inhabited by its own people for centuries. So, Nordwell insists that he has as much right to claim Italy as Columbus had the right to claim America. But of course, Nordwell has no right at all to claim Italy, so it follows that Columbus had no right at all to claim America. So if we're going to formalize this argument, we begin with premise 1. Nordwell has no right to claim Italy for another people, let alone by the right of discovery, because Italy has been inhabited by its own people for centuries. Columbus' claim to America by right of discovery is like Nordwell's claim to Italy. America, too, had been inhabited by its own people for centuries. So therefore, Columbus had no right to claim America for other people, let alone by right of discovery. So, when we're evaluating arguments by analogy, there's a variety of important tactics to use. The first premise of an argument by an analogy makes a claim about the example used as an analogy. To evaluate this premise, remember Rule 3. Make sure that this premise is true. It's true that cars need regular service and checkups to keep major problems from developing. And, in our other example, it's also true that Adam Nordwell could not claim Italy for the Chippewa. The second premise in an argument by analogy claims that the example in the first premise is like the example about which the argument draws a conclusion. Evaluating this premise is harder and needs its own rule. And we'll learn about this rule, rule number 12, analogies require relevantly similar examples, in the next video.